Hi, I'm Jenny Fish from One Big Happy Yarn Company. We want to be your yarn shop no matter where you are. Welcome back to our sock knit along. We're ready to turn the heel. Yay! If that scares you, don't worry. I'm here to help. If you're still needing supplies or missed knitting the cuff, click back to our playlist to watch those episodes. So here are our socks in progress. I'm all the way down to where I want to start the heel. We're using the beginner lightweight sock pattern from Knitting Pure and Simple. Let's get started. By this time, you should have already finished your cuff, gone down the leg, and be ready to start the heel. I'm going to be showing you on this little booty sock just so we can get started and get to that heel flap. The first thing we need to do is divide our stitches according to the pattern. Right now we have the stitches divided evenly between our 3 needles. Now we're going to switch things up and switch to just 2 needles with active stitches on them. And to do that, we're going to need 32 stitches on each needle. This is where I began. This is where my stitch marker is. I know I have 24 here, so I'm going to slide this needle down and slide over so that I have 32 stitches. So I have 24 here, 27, 28, 29, 30. Notice how I am slipping them purlwise. I don't want to twist any of these stitches. I want them all to continue going in the same direction. 31, 32. So now I know that I have half my stitches on this front needle. I'm going to flip it over and slide these stitches on to this needle. Once we get all of these stitches on the 2 needles, we'll be ready to start the heel flap. And the heel flap is knit flat, which means we're going to go back and forth on one set of these needles. All right, here we go. So we've got these divided, 32 stitches on each needle. We've turned this over. First thing we want to always remember when we're creating the heel flap is to slip the first stitch on every row. We're going from rounds to rows here. So we knit across this first row, but we're going to slip this first stitch and we're going to slip it knitwise. And now we will knit across the rest of this row. Using just the 2 double-pointed needles. The back one, we're going to forget about it. It's just going to hang out there for a while. So I want to point out the reason why we slip that first stitch. We slip that first stitch because later we're going to need to pick it up, and by slipping it, it keeps it nice and tidy on the edges of this heel flap. All right, I've got 2 more stitches here. Now this is the time where we are going to turn our work over. Again, we want to slip this first stitch, and now we are going to purl across the back side of this fabric. And we do this so that the front side of our fabric is in stockinette. We didn't have to do the purl stitches when we were knitting in the round because the right side was always facing us. But now that we're on the wrong side, we have to purl so the right side shows the knit stitch. Purl. We're going to continue going back and forth, knitting on the right side, purling on the wrong side, according to the pattern. We're going to go 29 times. So this is the point where we want to grab our row counter, our little clicky thing, and we want to mark. So this is going to be my second row. I like to click my row counter when I've finished the row instead of before I start a row. That way when I put it down, I know, okay, this many has been finished, and when I finish what I'm working on here, I'll be on the next row. We are going to click 2 times. You see there's the 1, click it again, 2. So I've done 2 rows. Now I'm ready to start my 3rd row. We're going to slip this first stitch knitwise, and then we're going to knit into the 2nd stitch and continue knitting along. Now I have heard that some people will count out how many rows they need in M&Ms and set them on a bowl, and after every row they'll eat an M&M, and when they're done with the M&Ms, they've finished their heel flap. Wish I would have thought of that earlier. Could have had a bowl of M&Ms sitting here with me. One of the things that the pattern says to do is to mark the spot below where we start our heel flap. So now that I'm back around to this side, I'm going to take my original stitch marker out, and I'm going to come back here and mark in the middle, 2 rows down, and let it hang out there. This will let me know that this is the front side of the heel flap, and it'll also let me count the rows in case I lose my spot. So we're going to continue knitting. We're going to knit on the right side, purl on the back side until our row counter gets to 29. Then we're going to start the shaping for the end of the heel flap. So now that we have the 29 rows made for our heel flap, we've got our stitch counter here reading 29, we're ready to go. I want to show you a few things, let you figure out where we're at. If I turn this over, you'll see here on this side, these are where all of our slip stitches were. This row right here, how nice and pretty those are, the slip stitches causes that. And that'll come in handy when we go to pick those stitches up later on. I want to also kind of give you a reference to where we're at on our sock. This is the section right here. Right down here. This is where our slip stitches are. The next section that we're going to get ready to start is the shaping that goes on the bottom of the heel. This is a portion of the pattern where I want to do it in a quiet space. This is the focus point. I like to refer to my pattern row by row for this section. So I'm going to set my stitch counter back to 0, and I can do that by moving these little side sliders. Let's get back to 0. And we're going to start with row 1, and our pattern says slip the first stitch, then knit 16. And we're going to knit 1, 2, 3, 15, 16. Now we've knit 16, and then we are going to SSK, which SSK means slip, slip, knit. So I'm going to slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, and then I'm going to knit these 2 together through the back loop. So when I slide my needle in this way, I already have my needle through the back loop, so then I'm going to wrap my yarn and knit those 2 together. Then it says knit 1 and turn. So I'm going to stop right here and turn my work. So now I have the wrong side facing me. I have finished row 1. I'm going to hit my knit counter, or my row counter, and now I'm going to look at row 2. It says slip 1 and then purl 3. 1, 2, 3. And then it says purl 2 together. So I'm going to slide my needle under the next 2 stitches, wrap my yarn around, and purl those 2 together. Then we have purl 1 and then turn. Now we have finished row 2. Click. You'll notice on these first 2 rows, we didn't go completely across. We stopped, we turned. What we're doing is we're setting up to create short rows. And short rows kind of give us a little extra fabric without adding extra stitches to our row. And you'll see that as we continue. We are on row 3. we are going to slip the first stitch and we are going to knit 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you're going to see this little gap right here. We're going to close that gap up with an SSK, which is a slip, slip, knit. So we're going to slip, slip, put our needle in. Our needle is already through the back loops, and knit. And then we're going to knit 1 and turn. We're going to click our clicker here, and now we're on the purl side. So this is row 4. We're going to slip the first stitch. We're going to purl 5 across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you'll notice we have another gap on the purl side. These 2 stitches are going to be closed up with a purl 2 together. So we'll slide our needle under these 2 stitches, wrap the yarn around, purl those 2 together, and purl 1 more. You're going to continue following the pattern row by row. Don't forget to use your clicker, stay on track, go slow. You've got all the skills. You've got the SSK, which is the slip, slip, knit, and the purl 2 together. Look at the pattern for all the specifics, and when it tells you that your heel is turned, you're done, meet me back here and we'll go to the next step. Okay, now that we have finished the heel flap and finished the shaping for our heel, we've got this nice little cup that has formed from our shaping, doing those short rows. Now we are ready to pick up the stitches on the side. But one thing I do want to show you in the pattern, she says to move all of the instep stitches, all 32 stitches onto one needle. We already did that before we started the heel flap, so you've already got that done for you. Now what we're going to do is learn how to pick up the stitches on the side. So what our pattern says is the next row, we are going to knit 9 across the heel stitches. So let's go ahead and do that here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now this right here is going to be our new beginning of the round. So what we can do is take a stitch marker and mark in our fabric right down here. That is the new beginning of our round. Now we're going to pick up another needle and we'll knit the rest of these stitches onto it, and then we'll be ready to pick up our stitches right along the side here. And what we're doing is we're preparing to go back from knitting flat to knitting in the round again. Let's get all of these on our needles here. Get all these picked up here and knit. And the pattern calls for us to pick up 17 stitches along the side of the heel. Oops, see that finicky needle? Let's put that back in place. Here we go. To pick up a stitch, this is how I like to do it. You see all of those stitches right along the side there? Slide your needle under 2 legs, wrap your yarn around as if to knit, and pull it through. I've picked up 1, 2, there's 3, 4. By slipping those stitches on each row, we have created this elongated stitch on the side. Makes it super easy to slide our needle underneath those 2 bars and bring our yarn through. I'm going to go all the way down the side. We're going to end up with 17 new stitches on our needle. You get 16, and the 17th stitch is going to be in this little ladder right here. This helps close it up so that you don't get a hole in between where your gusset starts. So your 17th stitch is going to be in this little area right here where you have the 2 strands from your actual knitting the row underneath. That's going to give us 17. So we've got our 9 from the heel flap, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Now we're going to turn our work and we're going to knit across the heel flap. So we're knitting across the inseam now, getting ready to go to our other side. Okay, we've got one more stitch on the instep. Now we're going to pick up our first stitch in that ladder area like we did before. Just slide it down here. Make sure you got, a little bit there, because if you don't, you get a hole where these 2 meet. And we want to try to avoid that. If you do get a hole in there, we can fix that later when we're weaving in our ends. But for right now, let's try to avoid it. Picking up in this ladder. I'm seeing that I'm capturing some other yarn, so I'm going to try this again. Let's go in here, get a big, there we go. Wrap it around, pull it through, there we go. Now we're going to pick up each of these along this side to make our way back to this needle here. You'll notice that you're getting a lot of stitches on your needles. Don't worry about that. This is forming the area that goes over your ankle, so you need a little extra fabric in that area, but we're going to decrease that away as we get to our foot. And we'll get back to the original amount of stitches after we do those decreases. And I'll show you how to do that once we get all of these picked up. All right, we are going to pick up this last stitch here. I think that's the last stitch. Let's go back and recheck here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Oh, one more. 17. Right there. Now we're going to knit across this needle here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And now we are back to the beginning of our round. So now I have all the stitches on my needle. We're going to go ahead and knit one round. Make sure that you have the correct amount of stitches per needle, and we're going to get ready to decrease. On our first row of decreases, we're going to knit to 3 before the end of our needle. So we're going to knit until we get to right here and do our first decrease. Okay, we want to keep our tension the same. We want to feel free to move your stitches up and down your needles. We're to the last 3 stitches, and what we need to do here is a knit 2 together decrease. So we're going to take our needle and slide it under the 2 stitches, wrap our yarn around and knit those 2 together. Then we're going to knit 1 stitch. Now we will knit across the instep. Now I'm on to needle 3, and what we're going to do here is knit 1, and then we're going to do an SSK decrease, which is slip, slip, and then slide our needle in and knit through the back loop like that, and then continue knitting until you get back to your stitch marker. What this is doing, it's creating decreases symmetrically on both sides of your sock. So I'm going to lay this out here and show you what we're looking at. This is your instep right through here. This is your heel, and our decreases are on these two sides, which on the sock are right through here. This is where this decrease is, and then the other decrease is on the other side. So if we hold the sock out like this, here is our heel flap. There's our shaping, and then our decreases are coming through here so that we can get back to the original amount of stitches and then knit for our foot. So we'll continue doing one round of decreases and then a resting round that kind of puts everything back. Then you go to another round of decreases, back to a resting round, continue all of that until you're back to your original amount of stitches. Then you just knit, knit, knit all the way around until you are to the length that you need for the foot of the person that you're making the sock for. There's a couple of different ways to measure your foot to determine the length of your sock. One of the ways is that you can put it on waste yarn and slip your foot in. You can spread out your stitches across your double pointed needles and slip your foot in, and I'll show you how to do that with my hand. You want to stop when you're about 2 inches from your toe, because that's how many inches it requires to do the decreasing for the toe. You can also put your foot down on paper, draw around it, and then measure that, subtract 2 inches, and however many inches you have there, that is how long you need to make the foot part of your sock. You start measuring from the edge of your heel to the end of your knitting that's on your needles. So you would measure from here to here, and when you get to that number, that's the minus the 2 inches, that's where you stop and get ready to start your toe. Just keep knitting until you're ready to shape the toe. Then meet me back here next time for the final episode. We'll close up our toes and have some fun with sock blockers. Be sure to hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss a stitch. Happy knitting!